Johnny Sports Network here to provide you with my Week 15 NFL predictions. Last week was a decent week, 8-6. There were a lot of upsets last week. The Titans upsetting the Browns on the road, getting their second win of the season. The Saints upsetting the Buccaneers on the road. The Steelers upsetting the Ravens on the road. The Jaguars in Jacksonville continuing to be the Colts' kryptonite, as that's now 11 straight wins for the Jaguars against the Colts in Jacksonville. The Chiefs, they are really behind the 8 ball now, as they have now lost 4 of their last 5 games. And the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles have now lost 3 in a row. What does Week 15 have in store for us as we are in the home stretch in the playoff race? Just 4 weeks remain in the regular season. We've got the Ravens and the Bengals, the Chargers and the Chiefs, Bills, Patriots, Packers and Broncos, Lions and Rams, and a lot more in Week 15. Is this a week that's too good to be true? Because we have the Bears, the Eagles, the Jaguars, the Texans, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, all favored by more than 7 points. We also have the top 2 teams in the AFC, the Broncos and the Patriots, both underdogs at home. We also have the Chiefs favored by 4.5 points against the Chargers. Without further ado, let's get to the Week 15 NFL predictions right here on the Johnny Sports Network. As always, we begin with Thursday Night Football. This week, Falcons and Buccaneers. In a matchup between these two teams last season on Thursday night, the Falcons won in overtime. Kirk Cousins, over 500 passing yards. And back in week 1 between these two teams, it was a very competitive game. The Buccaneers winning in the final minute. The Falcons had a chance to send the game to overtime, but a missed field goal. The Falcons, they have lost 7 of their last 8 games, while the Buccaneers, they are just hanging on to the lead in the NFC South. The Panthers are closing in on their lead in the division. Drake London's status is in doubt once again this week, as he has missed the last handful of games, while the Buccaneers, they are looking to respond after being upset at home by the Saints. With the Falcons eliminated from playoff contention, all they can do at this point is to essentially try and spoil or at least hinder the opposing team's season. We're at least going to see that twice from the Falcons in these final 4 weeks. Buccaneers Thursday night, the Rams in a couple of weeks. But I'm going to pick the Buccaneers to win this game, and to win convincingly. I was going to pick the Buccaneers regardless if they won against the Saints or not. With this being a short week and the Buccaneers are once again at home, not having to travel, major advantage for the Buccaneers, and I think they win very convincingly. Browns and Bears. The Browns, for the second consecutive week, they lose a game at home that I felt like was very winnable for the Browns. Even though the scoreboard may not reflect that, when they played the 49ers a couple of weeks ago. But the Browns had a lot of momentum until a horrendous play call on 4th and 1 from their own 33-yard line ruined all the momentum the Browns had in that game. And last week against the Titans, a good performance from Shedeur Sanders ruined with horrendous play calling. Going for 2 twice, the first time not making sense at all, at least in my opinion, and the second time an absolute horrendous play call. And I am going to predict that the Browns, they will part ways with Kevin Stefanski at season's end, if not before that. The Bears last week, an emotional game. A divisional matchup against the Packers in Lambeau. The Bears losing by a touchdown. Caleb Williams throwing an interception at the end of the game. And the Bears, they are the first of the 6 overwhelming favorites this week. I do think the Bears respond in this game. However, I think the Browns defense does enough to cover in this game. Maybe for a third week in a row, the Browns, they're in the game. It looks like it's a winnable game for them, and then a horrendous play call and they end up losing. But out of these 6 overwhelming favorites this week, if I had to guess, I think that at least 2 are not going to cover this week. The Bears are good at forcing turnovers. They have the best turnover margin in the league. But despite that, they're 27th in total defense. This feels like a game where either A, the Bears, they win, and it's a gritty win, but it's a 17-13 type of game. Or it's a game where they're up 2 possessions late, but the Browns, they score a late touchdown and end up covering. But either way, I am going to pick the Bears to win outright. Ravens and Bengals. We saw this matchup on Thanksgiving night where the Bengals, they won in dominant fashion in what was Joe Burrow's return, as he has missed the majority of the season with turf toe. Both teams, they are looking to get back in the win column. The Ravens on a losing streak. The Bengals, a game against the Bills on the road that they could have won. It was a winnable game for them, but they gave it away in the second half. Both of these coaches, I do think, are on the hot seat. I could see the Bengals maybe giving Zach Taylor one more season, and they say that it's injuries that is why they didn't make the playoffs. Because Joe Burrow has missed a significant amount of time. T. Higgins in concussion protocol. Trey Hendrickson out for the season. While John Harbaugh for the Ravens, he's still hanging on to that 2012 Super Bowl. The Ravens have not made it back to the big game ever since. I have said it before, but I haven't said it as of recent. If it weren't for Lamar Jackson, I think the Ravens would have parted ways with John Harbaugh a long time ago. For some reason, this season, the Ravens, they have not liked handing the ball off to Derrick Henry so much. I do think that the Ravens, they do win this time around. Even though we saw the Bengals dominate against the Ravens defensively on Thanksgiving night, I still don't find their defense trustworthy. Plus, I think there has to be some buildup between the Steelers and the Ravens for the crown in the AFC North, as that is a matchup in Week 18, the Ravens and the Steelers. Chargers and Chiefs. The Chargers defeated the Chiefs in Week 1 in Brazil And now the Chargers, they travel to Kansas City. A short week for the Chargers as they played on Monday night, and they had an emotional victory against the Eagles in overtime. Defense forcing 5 turnovers. While the Chiefs, they were upset at home against the Texans. Although, in my opinion, based off of the way the Texans have played in these last handful of weeks compared to the Chiefs, I wouldn't necessarily consider that an upset. And now the Chiefs, they are on the verge of missing the playoffs. The Chiefs, they are no longer in control of their destiny, something they have not been used to as of late. Immediately, what sticks out to me about this matchup, the Chiefs are favored by 4.5 points. The Chiefs know that their window, the door to make the playoffs, is closing each and every single week. But there's still a little bit of an opening, but it's not much at this point. Their first objective is to win out and then hope that you get some help. With the Chargers on a short week going on the road, a West Coast team in the Chargers going on the road to play in the early window, even though it's been a disappointing year for the Chiefs, and the Chiefs offensively, they've been disappointing. I think they do just enough to win this game and keep their playoff hopes intact. But I do think the Chiefs, they only win by 3 points. So I do like the Chargers with the points in this situation. Bills and Patriots. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, we have the two leaders in the AFC, underdogs at home this week. The Bills favored by 1.5 points. The Patriots won in week 5 against the Bills in Buffalo. And that is what started a slide for the Bills as they ended up losing 4 out of 7 games. They have won their last 2 games, so they've built back up a winning streak. The Patriots, they have won 10 in a row, and their only 2 losses of the season were by 7 points. There hasn't been a game all season for the Patriots where it's been a bad performance on both sides of the ball. I do feel like no matter which way I side with this matchup, I feel like I'm going to be wrong because part of me really likes the momentum the Patriots are on, winning 10 in a row. It's the Bills being favored in this game where I feel like it's a trap no matter which way I side in this game. But there was a Twitter Spaces that I was listening in on recently, and there was a gentleman who made a statement saying that you can indicate if the Bills are going to win or not based off of Josh Allen's demeanor before the game. Because every week, Josh Allen looks into the camera, gives a thumbs up, and says, "Go Bills." And based off of his body language, you can indicate the Bills are going to win or lose. I am going to pick the Bills. I do think with the Patriots being an underdog, winning 10 in a row, I do think that they're going to get an overwhelmingly amount of the public backing. And I think the Bills, they end up winning this game. But again, either way, no matter which way I side for this game, I feel like I'm just being set up to lose. So we'll see what happens. Commanders and Giants. This is the game this week where I feel like I simply have to pick someone to win. Both teams have a combined total of 5 wins on the season, both eliminated from playoff contention. The Commanders, a disappointing season after flying under the radar last season, making the NFC Championship game, dealing with injuries all season long. Jaden Daniels in and out of the lineup. And once again, Jaden Daniels is injured. His status for this game is unknown. The Giants right now, they possess the number 1 pick in April's NFL draft. In a game where I feel like I simply have to just pick someone to win, somebody is going to have to win. The Commanders have lost 8 in a row. The Giants have lost 7 in a row. I'm going to go with the Commanders. I'll take the underdog in this matchup. I feel like upsets are going to be limited this week. And this feels like one of the few upsets I could see taking place this week. If this is a game that I'm wrong about, I'm not going to be too upset about it because these are two teams that have had disappointing seasons. Raiders and Eagles. The Raiders, they are at the forefront of some controversy this week, deciding to kick a field goal with 4 seconds left to only lose by 7. And there was a lot of people unhappy with that. While the Eagles, they have lost 3 in a row. Their latest loss, an overtime loss to the Chargers, where Jalen Hurts had 5 turnovers. I did mention last week that regardless of how the game against the Chargers went, that this is going to be a get-right game for the Eagles. Am I going to go back on that statement because they had a 5-turnover game and losing in overtime? I'm not. But what I am going to say is, despite how disappointing the Raiders season has gone, Geno Smith, he did leave the game last week, and Kenny Pickett, in relief, 8 of 11, 97 yards, a touchdown pass, and 1 carry for 6 yards. I've been saying for the last couple of weeks the Raiders are better off starting Kenny Pickett moving forward, and they should. There's been a handful of games the Raiders have been competitive in this season. Even though I think this is a game where the Eagles, they get back on the winning track, I think the Raiders keep this to within 12.5 points. I have the Eagles still winning this game, but the Eagles offense, throughout the last several weeks, they've given me no reason to think that they're going to dominate this game in any way, shape, or form. They'll win, but I think the Raiders keep this pretty close. Jets and Jaguars. I have said plenty of times throughout the season, the Jets, they look like a much better team than what their record shows. They're currently 3-10 on the season. However, there is a possibility they could be 7-6, maybe even 8-5, if they weren't constantly getting in their own way. And it's unclear who the Jets quarterback is going to be in this matchup. Tyrod Taylor left with an injury in last week's game against the Dolphins. Brady Cook finished the game for the Jets. And they're going on the road against the Jaguars, who have serious momentum right now. A big win against the Colts last week, as they took first place in the AFC South. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. Their only loss in that span, a 19-point lead against the Texans in the fourth quarter that they surrendered. They held Jonathan Taylor to 74 yards on 21 carries. And I like the Jaguars to keep the momentum going as they win convincingly. I will genuinely be surprised if the Jaguars don't win by more than 17 points. Cardinals and Texans. For the Cardinals, it was a good start to the game last week against the Rams. A touchdown within the first 3 minutes, but afterwards, the Rams outscored the Cardinals 45-10. The Cardinals started the season 2-0, but have lost 10 of their last 11 games. And I do think that Jonathan Gannon will be let go by the Cardinals at season's end. Despite the Cardinals losing 10 of their last 11, there's been a handful of the games that they were competitive in. As much as they say any given Sunday, the Texans, I think they are just way too good right now, much better than the Cardinals. The Texans leading the NFL in total defense. The Texans, no doubt in my mind, defensively, strong defense, elite defense. But if the Texans offense can just get going, I think they would be the favorites in the AFC. And I think this week against the Cardinals, I think it'd be a great opportunity for the Texans to get some momentum offensively, as the Cardinals have allowed more than 40 points in 3 of their last 5 games. No question in my mind do I think the Texans win this game by more than 10. Packers and Broncos. The Broncos, despite being in first place in the AFC, despite being at home, they are 2.5-point underdogs in this game. When I think about it, it does make sense. The Broncos, despite being 11-2 on the season, their only 2 losses on game-winning field goals as time expired. The Broncos could honestly be 13-0 right now. But despite that, they are not winning in dominant fashion. There's been game after game after game where they are winning very close. Against the Eagles, having to rally in the fourth quarter. Against the Jets in London, a 13-11 win. Against the Giants, they had to score 33 points in the fourth quarter to win that game. Game-winning field goals as time expired against the Texans and the Chiefs. A 1-point win in overtime against the Commanders. The defense needed to make a play on a 2-point conversion attempt. Last week, only defeating the Raiders by 7 points in what was a very controversial ending to the game. Jordan Love has been the better quarterback in this matchup as of late and throughout the majority of the season. The Broncos, they've been winning their games with defense. The Packers defense, they have been playing great throughout most of the season. Just like with the Patriots this week against the Bills, the Patriots being an underdog, I do think the Broncos, they're also going to get a good amount of backing from the public. Despite the Patriots and Broncos both being underdogs this week, I think at least one of them is going to win this week. And I'm going to pick the Broncos to win this game. I am really thinking that this is going to be history repeating itself where the Packers are struggling in a lot of games. Then they have a dominant win going into Thanksgiving. They upset the Lions on Thanksgiving, and that was a turning point in the Packers season a couple years ago. But then they had a little bit of a roadblock in the month of December, and I think that this is the roadblock for the Packers. But I think the Packers will be fine moving forward. But I do think the Broncos, they get it done. Lions and Rams. The Lions with a big win against the Cowboys on Thursday night last week. And based off of the rest of their schedule, perhaps maybe even a season-saving win. And they go on the road against Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Matthew Stafford, the favorite to win MVP right now, as he has had a phenomenal season. The Rams, even though they had a loss to the Panthers a couple weeks ago, they still are the most complete team in the league, at least in my opinion, observing this entire season so far. The Lions' pass defense has been weak as of late. 376 passing yards allowed against Dak Prescott last week. 4 touchdown passes allowed to Jordan Love on Thanksgiving Day. 366 passing yards allowed against Jameis Winston. If you tune into my channel regularly, you know that I always will acknowledge a team that played on Thursday or earlier in the week prior, about the extra rest factor. And I'd say 7 or 8 times out of 10, I'll take the team that has the extra rest, but not in this case. As much as I want to say that I think the Lions, they can potentially keep this to within 5 points, I could see this being similar to Buccaneers and Rams a couple of weeks ago, where the Rams won in dominant fashion. But I think it'll be much more competitive than that. But I still think the Rams, they win by at least a touchdown. As acknowledged, the Lions' pass defense has been weak as of late. This is also their first road game in over a month. And I will be taking the Rams to win by a touchdown. Panthers and Saints. The Panthers had their bye week last week, while the Saints, big win on the road against the Buccaneers. Can the Saints pull off another upset? If you were to ask me about this game 3 weeks ago, I would have said the Panthers have it. As the Panthers, they had their bye week, extra time to rest and prepare for this matchup, a divisional matchup. But I did see this very important statistic yesterday regarding the Panthers as a favorite. The Panthers have not won or covered in a game as a favorite in over 4 years. The last time they won a game or even covered as a favorite was September 23rd, 2021. The 11 times since they have been a favorite going into the game, they're 0-11. Throughout the season, when I have seen statistics such as that don't support the side, for an example, there was a statistic I saw about the Lions a handful of weeks back after they lost, and they were 10.5 point favorites against the Giants. It was the Lions are undefeated against the spread under Dan Campbell. But then that next week, the Giants, they cover against the Lions. Streaks are meant to be broken, whether positive or negative. And I think the Panthers, they do get the win and they cover for the first time as a favorite in over 4 years. Titans and 49ers. The Titans with a big win on the road last week against the Browns, getting their second win of the year, while the 49ers, they had their bye week last week. And they entered their bye week with a lot of momentum. Winners of 4 of their last 5 games. Their last 2 games, they allowed a combined total of 17 points. Several weeks ago, there were some comments in my comment section saying to quit picking the 49ers. Their season's done. Or that I have some emotional attachment to the 49ers because I picked them to win pretty regularly. But the 49ers, they are right in the race in the NFC West. Even though the Titans, they got a big win last week on the road, giving them confidence. The 49ers, I think they have a lot more confidence. And I'm going to pick the 49ers to win. The question is, are they going to win by more than 13 points? As mentioned earlier, of the 6 teams that are favored by 7 or more, I think at least 2 of them are not going to cover this week. And I've already selected the Bears and the Eagles to not cover this week, so I am going to pick the 49ers to win by more than 2 touchdowns. As the 49ers, they stay right in the race in the NFC West. Up next, we have the Colts and Seahawks, and we have another one of those overwhelming favorites this week. Seahawks, favored by 2 touchdowns. I guess if you want to get really technical, 2 touchdowns and an extra point, and then half of another extra point. A month ago, the Colts, they were leading the AFC, but it's been downhill for the Colts ever since. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. Daniel Jones is out for the season with a torn Achilles. Anthony Richardson has been injured. Riley Leonard is week to week. There's talks about them bringing in Phillip Rivers to work out to be on their practice squad. It's been reported that Brett Rippon is the potential starting quarterback for the Colts this week. And Jonathan Taylor, despite leading the league in rushing yards, he's been struggling as of late. He's had less than 95 rushing yards in 5 of the last 7 games. The Seahawks are 4th in rushing defense. The Seahawks, they have the best record in the league as far as against the spread this season. And I do think that continues for the Seahawks. I think they win this game by an ample amount of points. I really think this is a 45-7 type of game, as the Colts season continues to go from bad to worse. Sunday night football, Vikings and Cowboys. The Vikings with a dominant 31-0 win against the Commanders last week. J.J. McCarthy, 3 touchdown passes. I felt like he was due for a big game. He needed a big game. He got one last week. How will he fare on Sunday night on the road against the Cowboys? The Cowboys, they are still in it in the NFC East, as the Eagles, they've been struggling as of late. The Cowboys are looking to respond after losing to the Lions on Thursday night last week. Despite the performance defensively last week, we have seen the Cowboys defense improve tremendously since the trade deadline. In this game, I'm anticipating a high scoring game. And I don't think many people agree, even though it was the Commanders last week, a Commanders team that has not had a good season. I do think that last week's performance, I think it has provided confidence for J.J. McCarthy. Plus a Brian Flores-led defense. I don't see this being a runaway game for the Cowboys like the sports books are suggesting. I do think the Cowboys, they win in a high-scoring game. And a high-scoring game for me, I think, would slightly favor the Cowboys. I am picking the Cowboys to win this game, but only by a field goal. I think the Vikings, they hold their own in this matchup, but ultimately fall just short. Week 15 concludes with Monday Night Football, Dolphins and Steelers. The Dolphins, they have won 4 in a row. They were able to finally win a cold weather game last week, dominant win on the road against the Jets. Does that continue into Monday night, or was it just because it's the Jets? Because looking at the forecast, it's projected to be about 17 degrees at kickoff with a 20% chance of snow. The Steelers, with a big win on the road last week against division rival Ravens, perhaps they're entering this game off of an emotional victory. Despite the Dolphins winning 4 in a row, Mike McDaniel, he has for now kind of silenced the conversations on him being let go by the Dolphins at season's end. I still think that it is a possibility he does get let go by the Dolphins at season's end. I think it's about an 80% chance. But if the Dolphins win this game, I think it drops to about 75, maybe 70%. As I've mentioned many times before, the Steelers' defense is an inconsistent defense. They either look like a elite defense or they look like a complete liability. They've given up an average of 26.3 points per game in their last 3 games. Dolphins running back Devon Chan, he is questionable with a rib injury. DK Metcalf is questionable with a stomach injury. However, it's trending in the right direction for him to play in this game. I'm going to go with the Steelers. And I didn't predict many upsets this week. As I said in the beginning, is this a too good to be true week, or is this the week where we see almost all the favorites win? At least win outright. And if there were a week in the season where all the favorites would win outright, I think this week would be a good candidate for that. Because there was a week either last year or the year before that where all of the favorites won outright. And I could see that playing out this week. And that will do it for my Week 15 NFL predictions. Comment your predictions down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. My takeaways from the NFL this past week will be on YouTube Shorts later in the week. Also, my predictions for round 1 of the college football playoff will be uploaded either Wednesday or Thursday this week. I'm not sure on the day, but it will be uploaded this week. And that is all I have for you today. The regular season is coming to an end, just 4 weeks left of the regular season. And for so many teams, the margin for error is very small. Have a good one, and until next time, Vegas is always watching.